Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles, now the NFL draft, it's behind us, and now we're looking ahead to the 2023 NFL season and taking a look at some free agents available who the Philadelphia Eagles could add to this roster to further bulk up what Howie Roseman was able to do in a magic way over the weekend. In the draft, it's the top free agents that the Birds could sign. You first take a look, though, at the Philadelphia Eagles selections in the 2023 NFL draft. We've done draft grades. I've shared my thoughts on this. I think Howie Roseman crushed it. You get Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the first round, both at needs there, defensive tackle, edge rusher, but Carter, he can play every single position along that defensive line. You needed to bulk up on the interior of that Eagles offensive line, but also get a guy who can play guard as well as tackle. You pick Tyler Steen, round 365, after not having a selection in that second round. Right after that, because you move back for Tyler Steen, they select Sidney Brown. Philadelphia Eagles fans are really going to like him, and the physicality he brings to that safety position, has a knack for making plays, and he's a really heady player. And then the final three picks here for the Birds, Keely Ringo in round 4, 105. The cornerback out of Georgia, who going into last college football season, a lot of people anticipated him potentially being a first-round pick. You go quarterback here in Tanner McKee out of Stanford in round 6, has an opportunity to compete with Ian Book for that QB3 spot. And then Coop's boy here, Moro Ojomo, the defensive lineman out of Texas in round 7 at 249, kind of looked at as an athletic combo freak. So with that, today's poll question is this, as we're about to take a look at these Eagles free agent targets here. Some good players available. What's the Eagles' biggest need following the NFL draft? I want you to share your football intellect with us. We know Eagles fans, they're the smartest fans among all 32 teams in the National Football League. As you go down there, please help us out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We did a couple of live shows throughout the draft. We picked up a bunch of new subscribers, 830 people, and analytically, the best 4-day stretch that we've had in terms of views and subscribers in the history of the channel. Picking up 830 people is great. We want more subscribers. So for those of you who are coming across the show for the first time, I'm Chase Sr. I give you shows every single day. And when you do subscribe, hit that bell icon, turn on your notifications, and select all. Therefore, you can hop on board our live shows. And anytime we do a regular video like this, you will be notified. Now, as we shift gears to some of these free agent targets, you look at this Eagles roster right now, given what they did in free agency and what Howie Roseman and this front office just pulled off in the draft. What's wild about it is that pretty much the Eagles don't have many needs on this roster. So keep that in mind as we take a look at some of these players here. The thought, though, with this is this. You have a team that just made it to the Super Bowl, and it's constructed in 2023 to once again compete for a Super Bowl. And as of right now, you're relying on some young players at marquee positions that might have to contribute for you in year one. And sometimes it's very difficult to do. So the common theme of this show is taking a look at some defensive linemen, because I'm thinking Howie Roseman, he loves to build the defense along that defensive line, and you could potentially add another player or two here, especially at that edge rusher spot. The starting defensive line, it's really good. Josh Sweat had 11 sacks. Fletcher Cox had 7 last year. Need a big leap from Jordan Davis. Brandon Graham had 11. And then after that, some of these backups are awesome. Derek Barnett, you get Jalen Carter, you're going to have Nolan Smith on this roster. The Eagles are loaded. Even with backups like Milton Williams and Contavious Street, they're also really good depth pieces along this defensive line. But I do think that if the Eagles wanted to bulk up edge just a little bit, and keep in mind, Hassan Reddick is the Sam linebacker, so technically he's not on this defensive line, you could do so by taking a look at some of these players here. Yannick Ngakoue, he had some ties to the Eagles back a couple of off seasons ago in that free agency period. It's wild to me that here we are on May 1st, and he's still not with the team. because you look at the numbers that he's put forward in his last 4 years, and every single year that this guy has been in the NFL, he's accumulated at least 8 sacks. Now, against the run, he's not good, but against the pass, that's how you win in this league. 8, 8, 10, and 9.5, his sack totals the last 4 years. Jadeveon Clowney is a pretty fascinating player because he has versatility. You know, Jalen Carter can play every single position along this defensive line. Clowney can play outside on a 4-3, inside on a 4-3, but also he's played a lot in a 3-4 scheme. And Sean Desai going to kind of run a hybrid scheme. And Jadeveon Clowney, as a depth piece, look, you brought in Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph last year. Could Jadeveon Clowney be a player? It's a veteran who you also bring in. He's never lived up to those lofty expectations since coming out of South Carolina and being drafted by the Houston Texans, but he is a game wrecker at times. Frank Clark, another intriguing name here. Why? Well, he's third all-time in the history of the NFL in playoff sacks. Anytime he plays in a big game, that's when he gets after the quarterback. Had a couple of quarterback pressures against Jalen Hurts in Super Bowl 57. Leonard Floyd, kind of in that Hassan Reddick type of build, a little bit too slight to maybe be a traditional 4-3 like a Brandon Graham, but as that Sam outside linebacker, he can get after the quarterback as well and drop back in coverage just a tad. What he's done over the last 3 years with the Los Angeles Rams, very good sack numbers, 9, 10, and 11 over his last 3 years. It, of course, helps him when he's playing alongside a player like Aaron Donald, right? But on this Eagles defensive line, you're playing with some really good players that could inflate that sack total as well. Robert Quinn, do you want to bring him back? Didn't do anything after that NFL trade deadline acquisition. But what's fascinating about Quinn, he has one bad year, then a great year, one bad year, then a great year, as evidenced by this chart here, which is kind of nuts, right? With the sack totals, 2019, 11.5. That's great. Next year, 2. Not good. 2021, 18.5 sacks. This past year, 1 sack with the Chicago Bears and the Philadelphia Eagles. So there's a reason why a lot of these players are available, and that's why we're breaking them down here on the show. But which free agent would you like to see in the Midnight Green? It can be a player who we've talked about or are going to talk about, or somebody different. Either way, let me know. Now, I love what Howie Roseman did with this draft class, and I also love these draft hats. As you can see, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith wearing them at the NovaCare Complex after their introductory press conferences. They became official Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Carter, you are an Eagle. Nolan Smith, you are an Eagle. And you see their hats there, the Eagles draft hats? You can get them right now. Chatsports.com/Eagles draft. I think these draft hats, some of the best and most fresh draft hats that the NFL has trotted out over the last couple of years. You can see for yourself and get one for yourself. Chatsports.com/Eagles draft. So we focus on defensive line. Let's focus and sprinkle in a couple of other positions of quote-unquote need. Like I said, the Eagles don't have many needs. Dalton Risner. If you need a backup to Cam Jurgens, who figures to play guard, Dalton Risner has played a lot of guard throughout his career in the NFL and is a solid player at the very least. Do you want to bulk up cornerback? You could do that too with the guy who played at Lincoln Financial Field collegiately in Rock Ya-Sin. Very good player. Injury concerns, though, have really kept him from breaking through, and that's probably why a lot of teams are pressing pause on bringing him in. His action cut short last year at the Las Vegas Raiders. He's had a litany of injuries over time. 45 tackles, 7 pass breakups, though, does have a good instinctual feel. Myles Jack, still out there, former linebacker of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a guy who, throughout his career, has put up a lot of big numbers. I love the acquisition of Nicholas Morrow. I think Nakobe Dean can take that next step, but you could use a little bit more depth here. A depth piece who had 104 tackles last year. Myles Jack, you could certainly do worse than that. The Eagles' linebacking depth chart, I think it's in a pretty good spot here. You lost TJ Edwards as well as Kaiser White. You replaced them, though, with Nicholas Morrow and Nakobe Dean. Morrow in free agency, obviously. Nakobe Dean, the 2022 pick, who slid all the way to Philadelphia. Not going to lie, he was looking pretty jacked as he was at Nolan Smith's draft party. So he needed to add weight. Looks as though he has. I think Sean Bradley, Also at a Temple, can be a quality backup. And then Hassan Reddick, as we said a little bit earlier, your Sam linebacker, 16.5 sacks last year for also another Temple University product. Shout out to Matt Rule. Roger Saffold, the offensive guard. He's played a lot of football throughout his career. Another depth piece potentially on the interior of this Eagles offensive line. And let's just throw this name out there too, because I'm somewhat surprised that Ezekiel Elliott is still there and he's still not signed. He had said, what was that, about a month or two ago, that he wanted to sign by the end of that next week when we talked about that report about him wanting to play for the Eagles. But it's become clearer and clearer that the Eagles don't value him, and they saw an upgrade elsewhere. That's why Howie Roseman, he swung on DeAndre Swift, who among all running backs last year led RBs in yards per touch. And now this is the updated look at your Eagles running back depth chart, and this is going to be set in stone for the 2023 season. Swift, I think, is going to be your lead back, but Philadelphia going to go running back by committee. They really like Kenneth Gainwell. Rashad Penny will be your RB3. I think you'll see him in a LeGarrette Blount type of role. He struggled to stay healthy, but you don't need him to stay all that healthy if you limit his workload a little bit and use him as a short yardage running back. And then Boston Scott, he is the classic New York Giants killer. And I'm really excited about Swift and what he can bring to Philadelphia. He grew up in Philly, by the way, went to St. Joe's Prep. If you haven't watched his commitment video, it is the most Philadelphia thing ever. The background track is dreams and nightmares. You got people rolling around on dirt bikes and ATVs. He's running all throughout the city. It starts on the Art Museum. It's peak Philadelphia. And hopefully he can peak in his NFL career as it's a contract year for DeAndre Swift. His first 3 years, he's been really good. He's just been nicked up a little bit with some injuries. But you look at the production, 521 carries after being a second-round pick out of Georgia. 4.5 yards per touch, that'll cut it. And behind the Eagles offensive line, could he get close to the numbers that he had in 2022 when, again, he led all running backs in yards per touch, 5.5 yards per carry, but he can also catch the ball out of the backfield. And even though he had 99 carries, he ran for 542 yards. So no on Zeke there. DeAndre Swift, the better player, the more versatile back, and a guy who's a lot younger, only 24 years old as well. So before we hop on out of here, Madden style, EA Sports. It's in the game. Rate the Eagles roster right now on a scale of 1 to 100. Madden style. You see what I did there? Voiceover? Might have been average. Either way, this show is not average, and that's why you subscribe. And when you do that, make sure you turn on those notifications.